Hi, everybody. I'm excited. It's super cool what Bill set up here because I have great stories and great relationships with Dave, and Dan's paintings inspired a lot of the different scenes. I refer to them in the book, and the book came out in 2023, and every time I feel like I'm tired of talking about, I'm trying to convince people, I'm tired of talking about the mech deck, I see something like Dan's painting, and I get fired up all over again. And especially this scene. There's great details here, and Dan mentioned too, and we're sort of working back from the end, but the Battle of Charlotte, which again was in part inspired by the mech deck and the mech deckers, we call them, was a turning point in the Southern campaign of the Revolutionary War. And part of this investigation was it seems like such a shame that we don't sort of honor and celebrate that and protect that legacy. But there's some fascinating details from that. The fact that Cornwallis had, in the first 18 months of the Southern theater, he had ripped through Charleston and Savannah. He had captured or killed or wounded something like 7,000 American soldiers. And the plan was to come west through South Carolina, turn up, come through Charlotte, and then head back west. And as he was going and sort of crushing all these small militias, the plan was all the loyalists that England thought were on the fence and sort of not speaking up, they would join Cornwallis. He would get to Wilmington, and then he would turn north, and they would squeeze from New York and up from North Carolina. And the plan was going incredibly well until he got to Charlotte. And again, it's connected to the mech deck. It's connected to our town's nickname is the Hornets. And Charlotte was really the first time that Cornwallis ever had to go backwards. And it changed the whole trajectory of the war. That's my connection to Dan. My connection to Dave, I just want to give you guys some insight into his business acumen. I pitched him the idea for a beer and book collab. And if you are requesting something that's strange from someone, I learned you do it right. We were in the same movie theater, and the movie was about to start, and I think he was just trying to get rid of me. But I pitched him this idea, and I got enough out that he said, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." I don't think he knew the mech deck story yet, but he was like, "Let me read the book. Let me think about a beer that would match that." And before the movie even started, we had a partnership. The ace in the hole, though, was that his son was taking my daughter to junior prom. And so I was ready to pull that out and go, this prom's not happening unless we can get a collab going. Sorry. Lower, maybe? But I'd love to start with Kate, that's my youngest daughter's name, because this whole project started with Kate. We had moved here kind of sight unseen 25 years ago, and like so many people who come here, you learn about Charlotte, you decide that this is going to be where you're from, you're going to raise your children here, and you love it, you love this region, you love the town, and your first inclination is to then research, well, what's the history here? What's it all about? What's famous about this town? What's important? And I was picking Kate up at Davidson Elementary. She was out on the playground, and I was waiting for her, and there was a North Carolina flag in the lobby of her school. And I just happened to notice the date, May 20th, 1775. And during 30 years at Sports Illustrated and ESPN, I kind of, the niche that I had carved out was sort of these unique, strange stories that were only sort of tangentially related to sports. And the minute that I Googled why May 20th, 1775 is on our state flag. I mean, why would we have a date on our state flag that was 14 months before we had even declared independence as a country? And I, as somebody who's looking for these incredible, stranger than fiction stories, the hair on the back of my neck stood up immediately. I couldn't believe it. And in the book we call it Mechdec face. And you experience it a lot when you explain somebody the story and the significance of this town. And the fact that Charlotte is truly the cradle of American independence, people go, what? Are you crazy? I've never heard that. That can't be true. It's a folk tale. It's Mechdec face. And the minute I started researching it, I realized also, which is really half of the fun of this story, is the Mechdec and the story of the Mechdec. It's not just on the flag, right? It's on our license plates. There's a hornet's nest that the Charlotte police, their badge is the shape of a hornet's nest. I had no idea the Hornets were called the Hornets because of what Cornwallis had nicknamed this place, this damn hornet's nest of rebellion. And you start to realize, just driving here today, right? You pass Graham Street. I live in Davidson. There's Brevard. You can't go 5 miles in this town without seeing a reference to the Mechdec, whether it's a bumper sticker or a statue, or it's incredible. And what I realized too in researching the book, the minute Kate helped me figure out this story, I immediately began obsessing over it, and I couldn't figure out a way to write it. Because I didn't want to do a history book. I didn't want to read a dry history book. And I realized right away that the modern day characters who are still connected to this story, were just as interesting, if not more interesting, than the original, I mean this as a compliment, crazy, wild, feisty, ready to fight at the drop of a hat, whiskey-loving Scots-Irish Presbyterians who were the first to sort of say, we're not hiding, we're going to put it in writing that we're free and independent. I mentioned Graham Street too, and that's another incredible story that's a part of Dan's painting. General Joseph Graham was basically a teenager when he agreed, even though they were outnumbered 15-1, to face Cornwallis. And after embarrassing Cornwallis and making him retreat 3 times, they chased the militia members out from under the courthouse. And again, the courthouse has an interesting story too. If you've ever gone up South Tryon, you realize that there's an elevation to it. You wouldn't think that just on a map or anything. It was just a coincidence that because the courthouse where we put our troops was sort of up at the top of that hill, Cornwallis couldn't see how many that people were there waiting for him, and so they charged straight into the courthouse and into all the gunfire. Then, once they retreated 3 times, they chased Joseph Graham up to near where Sugar Creek Presbyterian is. He was wounded 9 times and really was saved from being decapitated by the brass buckle that he kept. It was like not a tie, but like like the Boy Scouts keep. That's what saved him from being decapitated by a sword. I mentioned that, again, I apologize for jumping around. I told you I get fired up. But he ends up being one of the primary eyewitnesses to the Mechdec. So thank God he survived it was, I don't know how many bullet wounds and saber plunges. So in deciding to do the book, I was paralyzed because I'm not a historian, I'm not a history writer, but I wanted to do this book. I was obsessed by this story. It just was incredible. And it was an editor who said, well, just write it like you write your sports stories. Write it as an adventure. Go out and get your hands dirty and get your feet on the ground and go and investigate it and let the reader learn the story as you're learning it, as you're investigating it. And that became sort of the blueprint for the book. And one of my favorite examples of that was, you hear all the time, the people who are Mekdek skeptics, the thing that you hear all the time, especially from Jeffersonians, is what would a bunch of farmers and hillbillies on the American frontier, what would they know about such high concepts as freedom and independence? Well, it turns out, and there's a lot of this that goes on with the Mekdek misinformation that's happened over centuries now. It turns out the men who really thought up the Mekdek and discussed it and debated it, they were not, well, I'm sure they did some farming at some point, but they were the 6 main men who thought it up and decided to go through with this. They were all Princeton graduates. So they weren't farmers and they weren't clueless, whiskey-loving Scots-Irish Presbyterians. They were Princeton scholars. And I learned pretty early on, just by investigating the story, that they met at a place that became known as Freedom Spring. And there were little breadcrumbs along the way that Freedom Spring might still be in existence. And while I was sort of going all over the place, investigating the Battle of Charlotte, investigating the Jefferson connection, going to the British National Archives, I became, again, I guess I get obsessed a lot, but I became obsessed with the idea of finding Freedom Spring. There were some clues in some 75-year-old Charlotte Observer articles, and there were some mentions in different Mekdek books. And I thought that the reason why it became so important to me is because there are all these different things where the Mekdek hides in plain sight. But if you could find that spring, and if it were still flowing, could be a moment where you could stand right where the men stood who were the first to declare independence in America. And I just became obsessed with trying to find that spring and find that natural connection to this Mekdek folktale. And so I think it's in the middle of the book somewhere. And so I went to Huntersville. I'm sure you guys have seen, it's Alexandriana. It looks like almost like a state park sign on the side of 115. And I just spent day after day after day in that area looking for Freedom Spring. Over and over again, couldn't find it. It was getting to the point where this chapter was due, and that the editor in New York was waiting for it. And so out of desperation, I could still write the chapter, but it was like, I want to find the spring that will make it come alive. Out of desperation, I think 3 days before this chapter was due, I just went to Independence Hill Baptist Church, which is where the Alexander plantation and estate used to be in Huntersville. And that Baptist church was actually renamed Independence Hill in honor of the Mekdek, because of its connection to the Mekdek. I went to the church, I knocked on the door, I just literally, and sometimes this is just the best thing, you approach businessmen right before movies start, and sometimes you just go to a Baptist church and knock on the front door. Pastor Todd, as he's referred to in the book, opened the door, and I basically, without even barely saying hello, I just told him my sob story. I'm a sports writer. They paid me to write this history book. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm trying to find this spring. Please help me. I'm desperate. The book's ruined. I don't know what. Please help me. And he, without saying anything, he turned around and just sort of said, "Follow me." And I was like, I think he's calling 911, or I don't know what he's doing, escorting me out of the building. But I follow him around inside the church, and we come to, it's a part of their lobby where all their historical artifacts are from the church. And as he's walking, I can't help myself. And I'm like, this is really important part of the book. And imagine if we could stand or even drink from the same spring where these men decided to declare independence. It was also a gathering spot because of the spring was great water, and great water is an important ingredient in whiskey and distilling. And this is very much a part in keeping with the rest of the book and the whole Mekdek story, but I love the fact that the first place where we decided to declare independence was basically a meeting place in the woods where these 6 men could drink without anyone seeing them or interrupting them. So Pastor Todd reaches into this, it's like a big glass case, and I don't know what he's doing, and he pulls out this frame, and he turns around and he goes, "You're looking for this?" And I went, "What?" And it was an old black and white photo of his parishioners being baptized in the Freedom Spring. And so it turns out, without anyone knowing this, Independence Hill for decades, centuries, had used the Freedom Spring as their baptismal font. So I'm already talking to miles a minute, and I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Can you take me there?" And he was like, "Well, I'm not busy next week." And I was like, No, right now. Can you take me there right now? I'm like, "Please." And I think he realized that I wasn't leaving. And so he, at the time, all that land had just recently been cleared out. And there was a huge apartment complex being put up. And yes, and so now he's going, I think I know where it is. I don't know if it's been bulldozed. So somebody who went to Independence Hill was the foreman on the construction thing. So Pastor Todd calls him and is like, "I got this crazy guy here, and he's not leaving, and we'll wear hard hats and vests and all that. Can we come look for Freedom Spring?" And the guy says, "Yeah, come on through." So we walk. There is, again, the topography there is where the main building of that estate goes all the way down into like a valley. And the reason why these men gathered there was it was a natural valley, so it was cool, and they were protected. Because remember, if anybody loyal to the British Crown had heard what they were planning, they needed to do it in secret because they would all be hung for treason immediately. So we go down there, we're walking through the construction site. They're building the roofs. You can hear like the beeping of pickup trucks and all that stuff. And we get to the very edge. And I think what had happened, and I love this part, that because it was a natural spring and because it couldn't be stopped, they decided to end the parking lot about 100 feet from this spring. So the spring the spring's own power sort of saved itself. So Pastor Todd is up at the top of this, he's at the end of the parking lot, and he's looking, and he's looking, and he's looking, and what he's looking for is the old wood. The church had dug out Freedom Spring and then sort of made it into like just as big as this carpet with like wood planks. And you could still make it out. He was looking for those wood planks to try and identify where Freedom Spring was. And he's looking, and the whole time I'm thinking, this is not going to happen. this is just too perfect. And I was so lucky throughout the book that every time, I ended up calling it mech deck magic. Every time I needed a nudge in the right direction, or I needed someone to answer the phone, or someone to help me find an old thesis paper or something like that, it always turned out the right way. And Pastor Todd is looking, and he goes, there it is. And of course, though, what I explained to Pastor Todd was we might need to trespass to find Freedom Spring, and even as a man of the cloth, he was like, I'm okay with that. It's worth it. So Pastor Todd is the one, unless if there's any police officers in the crowd tonight, he's the one who stepped on the construction, the runoff fence and pushed it all the way down so we could both step over. We go down there, and you can see the wood outline, and someone had tried to, for safety, cover it with like an old chain link fence. Pastor Todd was not ready for the fact that I then got so excited. I got down on my hands and knees, and I scooped up a big thing of Freedom Spring, and he was like, I would not drink that if I were you. And I, not believing that I would actually find it, I hadn't really thought of anything clever or interesting to say. And so I just kind of, it was sort of cupped in my hand, I just kind of went, and the water is crystal clear. Because Dave and I then went back to the Freedom Spring to put that into the beer that we made for the book and for Mech Deck Honey Ale. So Pastor Todd's watching, and he's kind of freaked out, and I just silently said what I thought was the most important part of this whole story was that these men made Charlotte the cradle of American independence with one simple phrase: free and independent. And so I just said, free and independent, and I took a little sip of the Freedom Spring. And in the book, I say, at this moment, I've either shared a drink with the founding fathers of our country, or I've given myself the worst case of diarrhea anyone has ever experienced. And I am here to tell you, it was a little bit of both. So I don't know how I'm doing on time.
Way over.
Yeah. So I usually, the other great story I love to tell is the one about, the mech deck comes out, the Jeffersonians respond by trying to disparage it. Jefferson's own biographer, George Tucker, says this can't be a coincidence. Either Jefferson plagiarized the mech deck, or the mech deck plagiarized the Declaration of Independence. Somebody stole from somebody. And as a way to try and prove that, or to find some evidence, I had a whole nother adventure, minus the diarrhea, at the British National Archives. But I would love to take questions and go from there.
Questions? We'll start right here.
David, I've read your book with great interest, and my question is, and number one, I found the spring. I've been there. It's in a ravine. But you went to England. What was the tie-in with the Met Deck and the New Bern, North Carolina newspaper? Because you did so much research over there, I said, what the hey?
Yes, what the hey? That's what my wife said. There's a great passage in the book where, at this point, my wife knows I'm obsessed. I'm not stopping. I texted her and said, I think I need to go to London. And she was like, is this for the mech deck? And I was, yes. And she said, will you use frequent flyer points? And I said, yes. And she was like, cheerio then, have a good trip. But there is all kinds of, let me just say that there is the evidence for the Mektek, even though the original document burned in 1800, the rest of the evidence is overwhelming and irrefutable. And put together, you cannot deny the existence of the Mektek. And part of that evidence was the last royal governor of North Carolina kept writing to the king asking for money and troops, and he kept writing to the king, and as proof, he's like, they're in full rebellion in North Carolina. It's like, these idiots in Charlotte put it in writing. And he sent that, and he sent a paper called the Cape Fear Mercury, that it seems pretty clear from his letters to the king or to the English Secretary of State. He was like, I'm attaching a copy of the Cape Fear Mercury, which will show you a copy of the Mektek, and that's to prove what kind of situation I'm in with the open rebellion in North Carolina, so that the king would help him. And for centuries, that letter, which is called Dispatch 34, and the connected newspaper was in the British archives until a crony of Thomas Jefferson used his access as I forget who he was. I think he was ambassador to Great Britain. Used his access to take that letter and the newspaper out, and it was never seen again.
So it's like taking the piece of card catalog, taking that one file out of the card catalog.
Yeah, and this is great, and this is kind of what I ended up discovering in England was, and God love librarians. Oh, there is a note on the back of the surviving letter that says, newspaper taken out by a representative of Andrew Stevenson and not returned. So it's like a smoking gun.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long answer.
Rob, right here.
One of the things we're doing over at the Mecklenburg Historical Society, formerly association, we got a lot of good people. We've been rebuilding it, and we've been getting a lot of new members. Well, when we're adding to the board, the required reading is your book. And we haven't had one person have a problem after they've read that book. It is truly magical. Same thing with Centers of Influence, I think.
Thank you, thank you. One of the things I'm most proud of are the source notes. Everything is sourced, and I've been very pleased. The last event I did was in Richmond, Virginia. And I made all kinds of jokes when I got there that was like, do I need a bodyguard? I asked Kate, my daughter, from the beginning of the story to come with me, and she was like, you are on your own, Dad. I'm not going to Richmond, Virginia with you. They were so receptive. And I think for the same reason that once you lay it out and you show all the proof, it's hard to deny it. They were great. But I do remind people, because we do have the 250th anniversary is coming up in May. There are dozens and dozens of events, including my Kramer from Seinfeld reality tour that we're doing to bus tour to all the events.
There it is. I knew exactly what you're talking about.
But it's imagine if we were in Boston and somebody had to write a book to remind people about this story about the Boston Tea Party. That's kind of what's going on in Charlotte. We are the cradle of American independence. We really need to, if for no other reason, that these were some of our very first military veterans too. I would think most cities would kill to have this as their origin story. Hey.
Being in high school, my dad didn't read this book. And, it was last summer, and it was very interesting. I really liked it, but I liked how you wrote it, like your writing style. I know if it was like a historical book, like 400 pages, I don't know if I would have got through it, but I really enjoyed it.
Good. I love when people we kind of trick people into learning it's like they're having fun, they're laughing, and they're like, oh shoot, I just learned all about Charlotte history and the Revolutionary War. But thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yes, sir?
Well, that sounds like a site that needs a, North Carolina roadside marker. They like you to have a dedication ceremony when one's unveiled, and I could imagine Dan doing a painting of the, spring.
I'm taking all offers, yes. I'm taking all offers.
Prince at the dedication ceremony.
Yeah, well, I've met with the gentleman who owns that land, and, he is a MECDEC supporter, and I think that he's hoping that there is a Carolina, there's a Carolina trail that, okay, that is supposed to go near there, and once that happens, then he's gonna support, like an offshoot with a sign that says, 100 feet to the right is where these 6 Princeton grads first thought up the, declaring independence.
Natalie, jump in there.
So I have a question for you. Charlotte has long been, I guess, criticized because we don't have a way to brand ourselves, that we're kind of brown, if you will, right? We're wonderful, but there's no way to really have, like, Nashville has music, what does Charlotte have? So it seems to me that this could be that thing, right? I know we're first in flight, and that's been controversial as well, but, so I guess my question would be, what is your goal for the book? Because there have been others written, and what are your plans to try to make, especially since you have background with national media, to, finally change the trajectory on this?
Yeah, I mean, my plans were just to share this incredible story. I hadn't really thought much beyond that, but I've been co-opted or radicalized into, because I don't understand it, and I think the more people that learn the story, the better. And there were MECDEC Day in Charlotte. Presidents would come here in person to honor the MECDEC. There would be crowds of 100,000 people. There are the incredible stories in the book about what MECDEC used to mean. And I just don't, it's frustrating because you do hear all the time, I love this place, but what's our rallying point? And it's like, we have one just sitting there waiting to be taken advantage of. And what I learned really in the last 2 years is, you get the story in front of just one person at a time, and you go from there. Because it really is a story that people love to share. And so, just one person at a time, I think, that's how we've been doing it.
So I had a question. I was looking through Bob O'Neill's brand new book that he just got for you, in the back, and I am a direct descendant of the way you're describing these 6 people from Princeton. One by the last name White, made up of the Barris Black Boys.
Oh, huh? Okay.
And it's the same time frame, same sort of time, and my dad could tell you more about it than I could.
Yeah.
But have you come across any of that?
Oh yeah, it's all tied in, and it's all tied in because again, the other thing that people will try and say is, well, why would they need to declare independence? And if you learn the story of the Black Boys and the oh God, I'm already forgetting their name, but there was a whole movement that was in this region that was ready for independence. And if you learn the story, and I write this in the book, if you learn sort of what the whole story behind the Scots-Irish Presbyterians is, they basically have been kicked out of Scotland, kicked out of Ireland, come across an ocean, pushed west through Pennsylvania, came to Carolina to be left alone, to get away from the king's tyranny. And by the time they got here, they recognized before anyone else, this is not going to get better. Let's just declare independence and start fighting. So I'm giving you the abridged version, but it's if you understand the climate and the relationship between the Scots-Irish Presbyterians and the Crown, it would have been stranger if they hadn't declared independence. If they hadn't decided, let's just start fighting, because of the mistreatment, generational mistreatment by the Crown. So they knew that it was not going to get better.
I thought it was a little bit at that time until you mentioned Princeton grads, and that's not us.
The Princeton grads were just sort of the guys who decided the wording and sort of what needed to be said. There were 27 signers of the MEC deck who were sort of representatives of the different safety and they were representatives throughout Mecklenburg County who met at the courthouse. Coincidentally, the day that news of Lexington and Concord arrived in Charlotte, and that was the spark that created it.
Question for you.
Hey.
Okay, so I think maybe the group you're thinking of was the regulators?
Yes, sorry. Yep,
Regulator,
exactly.
yeah. And that's pretty well spelled out in that, the TV series, Outlander.
Mm.
You know, I mean, that's a very good portrait of the Scotch-Irish in
Mhm.
America. The latter episodes, and the battles of the regulator. But anyway, my question is a historical question. And as you know, the big issue is there's no real document. And I know after the fire, and from your book, you know, McKnight compiled what was not destroyed in the fire.
Right.
And put those all together. Now, I know that from your book, you said that you went to the library in Chapel Hill.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And saw these documents. Are his rough notes meeting minutes of the meeting itself?
Yeah.
Or are they something that he compiled 20 years after the fact?
No, the rough notes that you can find in the Southern Archives in the Wilson Library in Chapel Hill. And I'm glad you brought this up because the rough notes are from the actual meeting.
That's the meeting minutes from that meeting.
The meeting minutes and an outline of what the MEC deck was gonna say.
Exactly, right.
And so what I tell people is, if that was the only surviving evidence, that would be more than enough to prove the existence. But on top of that, we have 13 eyewitnesses, sworn testimony, not just Tom, Dick, and Harry. These are military veterans, lawyers, Captain Jack, the governor at the time, Joseph Graham, and there was a historian. What I love is some of these eyewitnesses that were part of the governor's report, their remembrance of the Battle of Charlotte and the Battle of Camden is taken verbatim. But the same historians say, oh, but their memory of the MEC deck is flawed.
What's
So-
up with that? I mean, it's crazy.
Virginia is.
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah.
Oh, listen, let's take a couple more. You wanna jump in?
Yeah, just quick question. Big fan of the book. What's next? What can we expect? What's coming
Excellent
next?
question. My next book comes out in October. It's called A Big Mess in Texas. It's about the 1952 Dallas Texans, which was the last NFL team to go bankrupt. And it was the team that was supposed to become the Dallas Cowboys. And they sort of went bankrupt and drank themselves out of the league in like 8 weeks. So, yeah, it was, I don't think they were Scots-Irish Presbyterians, but maybe. And then that team ended up becoming the Johnny Unitas Baltimore Colts. So
maybe we'll come back in October for
Yes.
another presentation.
yes, and I will stick to the 20-minute.
What were they drinking when they went out of business?
The retailer's gotta do some pitching here in just a second. Okay, 2 more, let's go.
I'll make this really quick. I have been emailing you and working, when Drew asked me last December to do a story map for the MEC deck, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but your book, listening to it on Audible on my commute, just hooked me right away. So I've been kind of on fire too, to tell people about it, and they're like, well, do you really think it? I said, yes. I said, I've had to read this stuff and put the pieces together, and I'm a true believer. So I tell everybody I can, I'm so excited that our website's going live. Our website is live.
Wow. So Nancy?
Pardon me?
Nancy.
Yes.
Hi. we know each other through emails and
Yeah.
through, and I have to say that this site, and you have to give everybody the address, and I've said this before, this site is going to do more to help educate and entertain people about the MacDeck story than maybe anything else that's come before it.
I hope so.
Is it, so what's the site?
Well, it's got a long name to
Okay.
it, but what we're gonna do, from what I understand, it's getting, and Drew can tell us, it's getting embedded in the May 20th Society.
Okay.
And then I'm also gonna link it, since I work for Mecklenburg County, it's gonna be on our GIS website, so I think it's gis.mecnc.gov, and then it'll be on the applications page, on the maps page.
Incredible. That's
And
good.
if anybody wants it, I can email it to whoever if they wanna send that out.
But it's got everything in one place, including an interactive map where it's got all the little pinpoints where you can go, oh, that's where Captain Jack's Tavern was. That's where Alexander Craighead is buried. That's where the Battle of Charlotte took place. It's phenomenal.
Last one?
My quick question is the spring now accessible by the public? Is it marked? Or is it still hidden in the woods and nobody knows where it is? Except
Well,
you.
no, it's been fun. I think it was my agent who said, if you start getting emails from people who follow the clues in the book to go drink from the spring themselves, she's like, you'll know the book is resonating. And it's fun. I probably once or twice a month get an email that said, I found the spring. So it's there, and I think it's a couple of years away from being preserved, but it's still there, and people are regularly going to see it.
Finding it. They're
Yeah.
finding it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I tell you how I found it?
Oh, yes.
I read your book and I went on a trek. I went by the James Parks McDowell Monument.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of.
Yep.
Interesting story.
Yes. Yeah.
Then I had seen photograph on Instagram for Lost World where y'all were at the spring.
Uh-huh.
And I'm looking at the apartment buildings and I'm thinking, that's how I'm gonna find it. I'm looking at the roof lines. So I wandered around there one weekend and I found it.
I love hearing that. That's great. There's actually, okay, so there is a beaver back in those woods who is like chopping down trees and trying to dam the Freedom Spring, so.
Maybe your next book.
Yeah.
Listen, do you remember how we started this with the David McCullough story of it's how history is taught to us? These three storytellers have really educated and taught us tonight, so thanks to them. And this book is really, not to twist your arms, but it is a must read. This is not a dusty history book. It is a book that goes from the NBA Charlotte Hornets to DaBaby to retired Judge Chase Saunders. They are all in this book, and it is exciting. And let's give the author a big round. I'm gonna lower this down. All three storytellers are here. I need to say Christopher Loy, Signs of the Times, is a storyteller in the back. He's the only Jesse Brown's associated person who has taken this stage and shared his book. So thank you, Christopher, for being here. This probably wouldn't happen without his help anyway. Did I miss any storytellers? I think I've got them all covered. Thank you all for being here. We're gonna bring the books down. I'm gonna bring the books forward. David will sign these books. He'll personalize them. Your coupons will work at the register. If you've already purchased a book, it's okay, buy another one. I mean, it's all right.
I've got one other question for David. David, when I heard you, I got the book for Christmas and I had not read it when I heard you speak at Trinity Presbyterian Church over on Providence Road. I guess that was in 2023?
I think so.
Okay. My question is, you autographed my book and put in there husband. What the heck does husband mean?
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Yes. Hopefully in May you're going to be hearing a lot of. It was basically just a cheer from that era.
It's like hurrah with seeds. Kind of. Thank you all for being here. The books are ready. We'll do this again next week too. Sam Johnson will be here, but please grab Who's Your Founding Father, visit Dan Dance Art, and head over to Lost World Brewing, and don't forget your umbrella.